All right, so I'm going to jump in. But I do want to welcome you to the podcast, Elena, because I got to read some of your story, and then after speaking with you, it's an important story. It's also unbelievably, I want to say, in like a beautiful story that is inspiring, even though it's a heavy, hard, sad story, if that makes sense. And I think people will resonate with it. I want to also share Brittney's story because I saw the videos and she is so adorable. So I want to be able part of that legacy of keeping her going. So before the world changed, can you give us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and Brittney?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on and thanks for allowing me to talk about Brittney because my story wouldn't be my story without Brittney. So, I'm from Massachusetts. I'm an MRI technologist, and before Brittney was diagnosed with cancer, so that was in 2022, we were a perfect family of four, my husband and our two girls. We have another daughter, her name's Trinity, and the girls were 12 years apart. And life was perfect, literally perfect. Brittney was what we call our rainbow baby. So my husband and I were actually pregnant with another child before her, and we lost that one to a miscarriage at 14 weeks. And then we got pregnant with Brittney, and that was like our miracle baby, our rainbow baby. And when she entered that world, everything just fell into place for us. There was so much joy and happiness in our life, and we had that with our other daughter, but there's just that completion of like, this is our family. Brittney was just this energy that you would wake up to and she would just be smiling at you. And she made every day just adventurous between her laugh, her smile, her sassiness, her perfect comedic timing at such a young age. And the biggest thing is as she started getting, into like 1 and 2 years old, she had such a passion for music and dance. Like I can't even describe it. I have so many videos of her at 1 years old, like singing Old Town Road and dancing in our kitchen. And it just progressed. And so I have so many videos of her putting on Disney princess costumes, running into our kitchen, performing, singing, dancing. And that was just our everyday life. Our house was filled with music and laughter and dancing and joy. And it was absolute perfection. And we had this whole idea of like, okay, our girls are 12 years apart. So when our oldest was going to be a senior, Brittney would be going into kindergarten. And
Oh,
then
wow.
our oldest would graduate, go off to college. And then our lives would be, Brittney. And so that was just kind of like this whole thing was mapped out. It was perfect. And then in May of 2022 is when everything changed. Everything changed. Brittney was a normal, healthy kid. She, obviously had what we were to experience as allergies, runny noses here and there. She never had an ear infection as a baby. She did get hospitalized right at the beginning of COVID. She had human metapneumovirus virus, which is like a form of RSV. And so it just
Yeah,
impacts
that
breathing.
became popular during COVID.
Yeah. So like she was hospitalized for like 2 days, needing high flow oxygen, but that was it. So that was in 2020. And then, so we're going through just allergies, runny nose, things like that, normal kid stuff, infections.
She's inside more, she's not running around and all that. Can I ask
Yeah.
one question? And maybe I'm stupid and I'll edit this part out because of how stupid this question will be.
Most stupid
When you
question.
say she's your rainbow baby, do I know what that means or do people know what that means? Or is that just the joy of your life, baby?
No, that
Or
a
is there...
rainbow baby is a baby that is born after the loss of another child, whether it be a miscarriage
Wait,
or, yeah, it's an actual
is there a
term.
time period that means anything?
No,
So I'm
not
a
that I
rainbow baby?
I mean, yeah, like I guess technically I am too. Like my mom she had a child before me that was stillborn, and then a few years later had me. But it's an actual term. The
I
term rainbow.
never heard that. Sorry, you learned something.
No,
Because
that's okay.
my mom had a miscarriage, my sister a miscarriage, and me.
Yeah.
Wow,
So you're a rainbow baby.
I'm a rainbow baby. I'm keeping that in.
But aside from that term, like she just completed. She was like
A
just the
ray of
rainbow.
sunshine, also.
Yeah,
You
like
could
from the
tell.
day that she was born, I would sing to her all the time the song "My Girl." That was her song, and we played it. It ended up playing at her funeral. But yeah, we ended up like that was her song, and I loved it because it's like I've got sunshine on a cloudy day, and she was born in May, so it was a perfect song for her.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And she is now. when COVID hit, she's how old? She's 2?
She was 2. Yep.
Okay.
So she was born in 2018. So she was 2. COVID hit, human melanoma, and then we continued on. The beginning of 2022, we actually had planned this amazing trip to Disney World down in Florida, and so we did that, and so that was like end of February, beginning of March, and then the weather started warming up, so it's like April. We get a call from daycare saying like she's really lethargic. We had noticed like a little raspiness to her voice, so we're like, oh, maybe it's her allergies, acting up. And kids at that age, you can't really give them a ton of allergy medications, so it's really hard to treat that. So we brought her to the pediatrician, and they're like, oh, she actually has a double ear infection. We had no idea. No tugging at her ears, no fever, no nothing. So we're like, okay. So we start antibiotics, and they're like, well, bring her back in a week. We want to make sure that they clear up. So we bring her back, and they're like, okay, the left one cleared up, but the right one, the infection's still there. So we're going to change the antibiotics and put her on a higher one. So, okay. A day later, I started noticing stuff in her inner ear. And they were like, oh, it probably, the eardrum probably ruptured, and that's just pus. So you're like, okay. So my husband brought her to the pediatrician. This was a Friday. It was like I want to say May 9th, and brings her to the pediatrician. And he's like, yep, that's exactly what it is. He sees this white stuff in her ear and was like, yeah, we're just going to continue on the course with this higher strength antibiotic. Okay. So I come home that evening. This is Friday, and her voice is raspy. My husband's like, her face seems off. And I was like looking at her, and I'm like, yeah, like it's a little puffy, very little asymmetry at this point. Like when she spoke, we could see like a little lisp, but it's like, oh, is it the ear infection? Like she was just seen at the pediatrician, so at first I'm like, let's just do the antibiotics and let's address this in the morning and, like give it some time. We head to bed, and I can't sleep. I was like, I don't know, something's bothering me, that I just feel like this is not, but I did not think like cancer, right? And I'm like, it's just weird. Like, did she have a stroke? But she's a kid. Kids don't have that, in my opinion. So I'm like, I don't know. And so I ended up calling the pediatrician's office in the middle of the night. It was like 11 o'clock. And I was like, hey, this is what's happening. And they're like, well, it could be Bell's palsy, which can cause that like facial drooping. So they're like, take her to the ER. So I'm like, okay. So at this point, it has started to progress, to get worse, as far as it really looks like my daughter, my 3, almost 4-year-old, had a stroke.
And it's just in hours, it sounds like.
Yeah. Half of her face is just like drooping. When she talks, there's only half of her mouth working. So we go into the emergency room. They take her back. They do a CT scan. And they're like, yeah, it's just a really bad ear infection. So we're going to admit her and put her on IV antibiotics. Okay.
I guess this is also right before COVID changed the world of how people really look at like hospitals and doctors. You're just like, okay, they know best.
Right. Like we're talking, it's 2022.
Yeah.
I work in MRI. Like, I'm like, yeah, I trust medicine. We're at Bay State Children's Hospital, which is a level 1 trauma hospital in our state. The other side away from Boston Children's. But I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, they know what they're talking about. So they're like, we're going to admit you. So we get through the night in the ER, and then finally they get us up to a room, and they're like, hey, the head of ENT, ear, nose, and throat, looked at the CT images and felt like they didn't get far enough back, and they want to re-image her. So I'm like, okay. But then they tell me they want to do an MRI. And that's when I was like, something's not right. Like, a CT is one thing, an MRI, you're looking for a lot more different information. And I was like, is it with and without contrast? And they said, yes. So at that point, I had a friend that was working in the MRI department at the hospital. And I was like, hey, and she's like, yeah, they have her coming down for this exam. It's a full head. So I said, okay. That's when I started getting nervous. And again, we're still dealing with COVID aftermath and masks and things like that. And so they had said only one of us, my husband and I were both there. They said only one of you can go down. And so my husband's like, you go, like you have more of a knowledge and an understanding. And I said, okay. So we do the CT, and then they wheel us right over to MRI, and they're like, we have to sedate her, signing all this paperwork. And they're like, just wait here. And so I'm standing in the hallway at some point, and I see this doctor walk by, and then he comes back And he's like, I'm the head of ENT. And he's like, you're Brittney's mom? And I said, yeah. And he's like, we found a mass in her inner ear and we can't like do anything. We're going to have to ship you to Boston Children's Hospital. We think it's what's called Langerhans cell histocytosis.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm standing in a hallway. My husband's upstairs. I don't have my phone on me. Little did I know that at the same time, my husband's being told the exact same thing and he's freaked out. Like,
that's the bedside manner problem.
Yep. So
and your other daughter's with your husband,
our
right?
other daughter was getting ready for prom. So she was getting ready for prom. And so we didn't tell her, like she knew we were at the hospital, but it's like, we can't tell her this over the phone. We want her to enjoy her time. So they tell me this and my friend comes out of MRI and she's like hugging me and I start crying. And then they bring me back and they're like, okay, mom, like you got to get it together. Like she's waking up. And I'm like, you just told me my child has some like mass in her ear. No word of like cancer yet. But I'm like, what the fuck? So we get upstairs. Then we find out that they had told my husband that she had blood clots in the sigmoid and venous portions of blood flow like to her brain.
Was it a different doctor or the technicians?
No, it was a different doctor.
Oh, that's interesting.
So they're like, we have to start her on blood thinners because it's impacting the blood flow to her brain. And thankfully there was no impact to the brain as far as like a stroke or anything like that. But so we're told it's this Langerhans cell histocytosis. So I'm like an information person. So I start Googling it and it is like, you know, a form of cancer, but they're like, you know, we have to send you to Boston Children's. So this is on a Saturday. We get told all of this. Okay, making a game plan. They're like, we're going to send you via an ambulance tomorrow on Sunday, which is Mother's Day. So I talked to my husband and I said, I'm going to go home to tell our other daughter in person after prom and everything. I'll spend the night at home. I'll pack a bag and I'll be back. And so he's like, okay. So our 3-4-year-old had to start getting blood thinners into her stomach, injections twice a day. You know, she hated that.
Who or how did you tell Brittney? And how was that like?
I don't think that we ever really told her that she had cancer. Because at that point we still didn't know. We just said like there's something going on and we have to do these treatments, these procedures as far as the injections. Like at this point we still didn't know that this was cancer. Okay. Nobody had told us that until we got to Boston Children's.
Which just, I guess, or I'm just discovering as we talk, it just basically proves that they knew, but they didn't give you the full spectrum of the reality.
I guess it was like they couldn't confirm until they did a biopsy.
Okay.
So they were like the appearance.
Well, they knew she had a mass, right?
They knew she had a mass,
but they don't know if it's benign or cancerous.
Right. They said that the appearance and the location, because Brittney's mass tumor was inside her inner ear, like in the petrous apex bone, part of her temporal bone. So it was like inside that bone, outside of the brain. And so they said that the appearance and the location are textbook Langerhans cell histocytosis, like textbook.
And if you Google that, does that at all reference cancer?
It does, yeah.
So they knew.
Yes. So we didn't, again, we were like waiting. I think it was like you just still are in shock of like, is this really happening?
Of your life.
And then it actually gets worse. So when we finally got to Boston Children's, they said we had to be transferred via ambulance. That took an entire day.
I was going to say, how close is that?
So it's for driving for us, it's about 2 hours. The issue is that the hospital had a contract with one of the ambulance companies and they could not transport her. Like if they got a call, they had to service the call before they could transport her.
They didn't have a backup ambulance.
Nope. And they wouldn't allow another company to transport because we had family that worked for another ambulance company. And I was like, we're sitting here. Boston has a bed waiting for us. We could have driven her ourselves because even at that, then the ambulance was like, yeah, she can't be on any machines. She can't.
So it was just a car ride.
Yeah, it was just a car ride. But it didn't happen until like 11 o'clock at night.
So many questions, but not even for you, just the medical field.
Yeah. So we got to Boston Children's at like 1 a.m. and got in a room. And then at 6, 7 a.m., all of the teams start coming through, like neuro, infectious disease.
And now it's Monday, right?
Now it's Monday. Yep. And so everybody starts coming in from, all the different departments and giving all of their differentials. So first we get the oncology doctor who says, yep, I'm like confident this is Langerhans cell histiocytosis, even if, with the chemo it's like a -1, like highly treatable. And we're like, okay, this is promising to hear.
Still cancer, but
Still cancer, but you're telling me like it's a -1 on the chemo scale, like highly treatable. Like he just seems so confident, and like that gave us like, okay, this seems like something manageable. Like we can get through this. And then the next team comes in and they're like, no, we think it's like this really bad infection that's just not responding to antibiotics. And then we get, after everything all day, like she's not allowed to eat because they were going to do a biopsy. And then finally she falls asleep in my arms after screaming, and they're like, we're just going to take her to the OR, and we just think it's a really bad ear infection, and we're just going to put tubes in her ear, and you guys are going to be headed home.
I feel like I want to word this, so are they not communicating? It sounds like there were multiple sets of doctors and teams and completely no transparency between them of like what they're telling a patient, but also diagnoses and thinking and thought processes behind the scenes before they talk to you.
I have no idea, because they kept telling me, they also kept talking to me, and they're like, okay, so she's had multiple ear infections. And I said, no, this is her first ever ear infection. Like, I don't know where you're getting that information. And so I think eventually they all, talked, and then that they came up with the plan of like, we're not going to there's nothing to biopsy. It's a bad ear infection. Let's just go in, put tubes in, and call it a day. You think about from a parent's perspective, like first we're being told it's cancer. Then, so we like went on this roller coaster. So now we're like, okay, great. Like,
yeah, that we could live with.
Yes, like let's just do that. And so they actually like were checking us out of our room at Boston Children's and was like, yep, pack up all your stuff. We're all gonna go down to the OR, and then once she's done, you guys can go home.
And they're an incredible hospital.
Yes, they are. People travel around the world to go to this hospital. So there's that level of trust. There's that level of like, okay, I'm trusting in what these people are saying. Like, this is a top-notch hospital worldwide. So we get down to the OR, and as we're like signing the paperwork for sedation, the team comes out and they said, we've changed our mind, and we're gonna go in and do a biopsy, and you guys need to stay.
And you're like, what changed? Because you haven't seen or talked to my child in hours, and now you're changing the opinion once again.
Like, we're like, where do we go? And they're like, oh, we'll have to, you'll just wait and we'll find a room for you.
Starting this podcast scares me more than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be really sad, but I think just the stories of like the behind the scenes are so important for people to understand, because you learn you got to be your biggest advocacy, and you got to just learn, like, say stop, what's going on, who are you actually talking to, and like I want all the doctors on one call. I'm not doing this with like 20 different people at 20 different times.
Yeah.
Like, it's wild. But you and your husband are at least able to be in the same room together at this point here, right?
Yes, like we were together. He had driven ahead of us. He was like waiting in Boston for us for hours. So I rode with her in the ambulance, but we ended up together. So as she's in the OR, we're just like spiraling. Like, what has changed? What are we gonna do? So she gets out of the OR. They biopsied the inner of her right ear, and they admitted us back up to the hospital. And so they're like, it's going to be a couple days.
Is it just the standard biopsy style?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
At that point, it was just a standard biopsy. And so, we're like, okay, we'll figure this out. And I don't really remember where this was in the timeline, but obviously we had a lot of family that was caring for us, and they rented a hotel for us close to the hospital, because if you've ever stayed in a hospital, like showering there or whatever, and just as a parent, you can't fall apart in front of your child, right? So it was just allowing us a little bit of breathing room. So I think like 2 days go by. We're in the hospital. We're living there. Brittney, all she wants to watch is Captain Underpants, which I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
I don't know if I've seen it, but I have heard of it because it's a great title.
Which, like, we had never heard of this before, but in the ER, Brittney discovered it, and it's, boy humor, like, and she just thought, and like, that's all we watched. So we finally get told, like, biopsy results are back, and the team comes in, and it wasn't the doctor that was telling us it was Langerhans cell histiocytosis. So I said, where's that guy? And they said, well, it's not that. It's a solid tumor. So this is the solid tumor team. And then proceeded to tell us she had what's called embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma.
And for people that don't speak that language, what?
So it's there's a sarcoma, which is a solid tumor, and then there's like subsets of it, like alveolar and rhabdomyosarcoma, and it just has to do with where it represents in the body, and then also like how it manifests with gene mutations. So hers is a muscle cell that just mutates into a tumor. So it's not like a blood cancer, it's not a brain tumor, it's a muscle cell that mutated from embryonic cells. So
it grows through the muscle tissue instead of being outside of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And typically sarcoma, like embryonal rhabdomyosarcoma tumors do get located in like the face and the neck area. I mean, they can show up other places. But where hers was in that temporal bone was considered rare.
And like, can I ask, well, you just said rare, so I was going to ask the second rare question, I think. What is it, and I don't know if you know statistics, but what is like the average age? Is it something normal for like someone that's under 5 years old, or is it like a later on?
So this typically, this type of cancer usually does get diagnosed around her age. I think like between 3 and 8 years old. Older kids can have sarcomas. There's like Ewing sarcoma, which affects more of like the bones. So yeah, I mean, she's within that range of kids. But then they proceeded to tell us that the tumor was wrapping around her blood vessels and her facial nerve. And that's what was causing
so that's drooping. Why it mimicked the sinus problems and the ear infection sign. So
it's causing that facial droop because there was pressure on the nerve. And then later on we would find out that there was pressure on her vocal cord nerve, and that was causing her raspy voice.
It kind of went quickly, even though the doctors aren't moving quickly as it seems, but it was literally, it seems like in like a 5-day span, it all kind of got
so we
unraveled, I guess is the word, right?
So I think like we went in on a Friday. By Wednesday we had biopsy results, and we were being told like she needs a PET CT to stage it to see if it has spread anywhere else. We at one point did a skeletal survey, which is they take x-rays of all the major parts of the body to see if cancer is elsewhere. In addition to that,
can it spread easily through muscles like it does through blood?
Spread to just like more the tumor growing more, or just show up in other locations, so like other types of cancers that metastasize. So they had to do that. And so I just remember being in that room, and they're just like, yeah, this is the solid tumor team, this is what's happening, we need a PET CT, and so we can stage it as far as if it's stage 1, 2, 3, or 4. Meanwhile, my daughter has the biopsy is like still bleeding. We keep asking the team to come up and like,
why is it still bleeding?
That was a great question.
I've had 6 biopsies. They don't bleed after.
They were like, oh, just like highly vascular, and we're like, okay, like can you do something like cauter and
oh well, all the blood thinners, they had her on blood thinners.
Yeah,
that's why she wasn't clotting.
Yep. But they were just like, just keep putting stuff on it. And we're like, I was like, I need to go take a proper shower.
And
so I remember walking out of the hospital in like this haze, and the hotel was a couple blocks. And I just remember walking the streets of Boston and just seeing all of these people walking, and just like, I'm like, their lives are just normal, and mine has just imploded. Getting to the hotel and just stepping foot in the shower and sitting down in that shower, just crying, thinking this can't be happening. Like this can't be happening. And just sat there for minutes, and then picked myself back up and walked back to the hospital and was there for Brittney. But yeah, and then things just continued. Like they were like, okay, in order to do any type of chemo treatment, chemos vary for toxicity and side effects, but they're like, before we can do anything, you need to decide what you want to do, because the medication that is needed to start for her will cause her to be infertile. And so at 3,
what was it, the radiation did they need?
No, it was the chemotherapy that they were going to use. They said that before we can start anything, you need to make a decision for your 3 to 4 year old if you want to preserve her eggs.
Can they do that at that age?
Yeah, they can.
Why does that sound so weird to me? Sorry.
Yeah, no,
it was the most honest podcast she'll ever talk about.
So yeah, they're like, you need to make a decision like now, because we could go in, we can, put in her port and do all of that, but either we don't do the surgery and she would be infertile and we would be taking away her ability to have kids and take away her choice if that was the case, or we could do the surgery, preserve one of her ovaries, and they told us that there's a procedure where they can go in and they can extract the eggs later on and all that stuff. And so again, you're just like being like blow after blow of like,
and you don't have time. It's like they
no, you don't.
Worst news with wild ideas to a common human person. Like you're just hearing like, and then it's like, because I don't think they. I mean, they unfortunately they do it day in, day in and day out. But they're also, they know the mechanics behind it. At least we hope. So like they're just trying to get you information. They never take a moment to step back and just be like, they need to process it. Like they need to like have a couple hours without people telling them they have no time. That was always my hate in everything from when I was dealing with my mom in cancer or even my own health issues. It's always like, well, we need to know today. I'm like, yeah, not happening. You just told me something that's changing my life forever. I'm going to take a moment. And they hated that. They'd be like, I was like, your life's not on hold. Mine is. So you're going to wait 5 minutes for me. So.
Yeah. And then even as a parent, though, you're like, okay, I want my kid treated like as soon as possible because what's going on. But it's like, what are you talking about? I have to make decisions about her fertility. Like, I'm hoping that that's what we're getting to and that she'll be cured and that we give this. So we ended up deciding to do it because I'm like, I want to at least give her that choice later on in life. I don't want to take that away from her.
Well, so just so you know, it's not these choices. You're doing what you're a mother. You're just doing.
Yeah.
Either way you went, it would have been the right way because you're just a mom doing what you have to do for your child.
I know, but you never know. Like there's kids, kids grow up and they resent their parents for a lot of things as far as maybe they don't fully understand the decision at the time or, so it was just, we're like, let's just do it. Let's, do it for her to have that choice, and they were like, it's just a little extra procedure. She was already going to go in for like her port and things like that. So
that doesn't sound like a little procedure.
Well, I guess in the grand scheme of things with everything else going on.
And your husband's with you this whole time too?
Yes. So we were together in Boston. So we ended up we were there in Boston till about Saturday. And they're like, you guys can head home. We're about 2 hours away. And so we were like, okay, let's go home. Our older daughter came out to visit us, but it was very traumatic for her.
How old is she?
At this point, she had just turned 16. So she had just turned 16.
Live her life and figure out who she is.
Yeah. So she came out, and prior to all this, she was like, I want to go to school to be a nurse. And then she sees Brittney and she sees everything that we're going through just in the span of a week. And she was like, she's like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do nursing anymore. So she's going through it. So we're like, let's just get home. Let's get our family together. Let's get Brittney out of this hospital. One of the things that changed a lot with Brittney is that Brittney was a very lovey, affectionate kid. And one thing that we started to notice